Hi, hello, and welcome to turn 4 of season 2 of City of Cards. Boy, do we have an interesting one this month, for we are going to experience the first turn of our very first conflict. I have been very excited to see how this one plays out. A lot of talk, a lot of prep, a lot of scheming. And now the chips are down. We're going to have to see who will take the lead in this race. Or even potentially win. We've done the math, and it is possible for one of these sides to win in a single turn. Yeah, there's a little tiny graphic in the bottom right screen to show the current conflict. I thought that felt kind of cool. I wanted there to be a little indication to be like, who's fighting who? Of course, the Society of St. Leopold hold no domain, so the only bit on the map where their logo is present is in the relationship or the faction status map. So it's not nearly as clear where the front lines are, except for anywhere where the group has territory, because that's where the Society of St. Leopold is gunning for. Let me just correct the music for a little bit of intense, because yes, the tensions are high. So let us roll these dice and see who goes first. We know for a fact that the group are going to go before the Society of St. Leopold, for that they have the advantage of being a player faction, but whereas usual the NPC factions have one action per turn, the Society of St. Leopold is engaged in a conflict. So they're going to be performing 2 actions this turn. Very scary indeed. So let us see how these dice are rolled. Okay, we've got a couple ones there. Redcoats and Patriots at the bottom of the barrel, fighting it out like crabs to see who will be second last. The group are at number 6. Custodians with their +2 in the lead at 9. The Knights are at 8. You haven't missed much, Hug and Kiss. Not much. The Gemini League are at 2. The Boston Camarilla at 7. Ooh. That has just occurred to me. You're not going to be able to see. So, what we're going to do, let's put this in the top right corner as opposed to the bottom right corner, because you're not going to be able to see. There you go. Now you can see the painful initiatives, as JJ describes them. The Boston Camarilla are at 7. The First Light are at 5, and Society of St. Leopold at 9. Even though they can't go before the player factions, they are absolutely gunning for the initiative in this conflict. It does move. I have the power of movement. I can move things. Tee-hee. So, Redcoats, Patriots at the bottom. Gemini League at 2, so at 3rd last place. The group are in the middle. The Knights go second, and the Custodians go first. Yes, the Knights go second with... Ooh, that's fascinating. The Custodians and the Knights both rolled a 7, but because the Knights have a +1, they have an 8. But because the Custodians have a +2, they have 9. So there's the initiative bonuses coming into... Ooh, pardon me, coming into play. Gemini League are 3rd last, and we will have a roll-off between the Redcoats and the Patriots. Boston Camarilla are 2nd, First Light is last, Society St. Leopold are first in the NPC order of operations. 2d10s. The Patriots are on the left at the moment. The Redcoats are the die on the right. Whoever rolls highest will go second last. The Patriots go second last, and the Redcoats tailing at the end of the order. It is time to begin now that we have rolled initiative. Because this is a moment of conflict, there are some assists going around. The Patriots have assisted the group in their war efforts this turn, bringing their status from -1 to 0. And the Knights have also provided an assistance, but not to the group, to the Patriots, giving them a coin in which they have owed for a act I can't quite remember. I believe this happened a long time ago in this year, early in the year, and the group and the Knights, pardon my slip up. The Knights said that they would give the Patriots a coin by the end of the year, and that time has come. So, without further ado, now that we have the assists and that there are no trades in order to perform, we move on to our first faction with the Custodians. I'm going to quickly check to see if any narrative has been typed up. Not quite so, not today. If you are still, your faction is yet to go and you want to get some last minute narrative, you know I am always willing to read it out. Just put it into the chat as well as ping me on Discord just to make sure I catch it if you do that. So, the Custodians, they have no narrative for me to read, but they gain 1 coin, they gain 1 rep, which can go anywhere because their rep bar is full, and they gain 1 XP, which gives them a crew advancement, a coterie advancement, an advancement, which they have written down that they would like to spend on unlocking another faction ability, persuading donations. Let us have a little read at what persuading donations is all about. JJ is pointing out that when a kindred says by the end of the year is what they actually mean. Yeah, I mean, by the end of the year does count within the end of the year. Persuading donations has been unlocked by the Custodians. So let us read the fluff that is associated with this faction ability. The Toreador loves her art, and the Gangrel his baseball. The Malkavian is infatuated with his studies, and the Nosferatu her secrets. The Ventru could not exist without his stocks, and the Tremere without his contingencies. All of them have their vices and obsessions, and with generous donations here and there, persuasion becomes a numbers game. When performing the Sway Primogen action, you may spend 1 coin to add 1 tick to the targeted Sway Primogen clock. So, the Custodians are beginning to add money to the equations when it comes to swaying Primogen's minds and getting their favor. Intriguing stuff. For their first action, speaking of Primogen, is to make use... Ooh. We zoomed out to the whole globe there. Kumu's having a little bit of a lag today. I've noticed that this past month it's had a little bit of struggle. You've got this, buddy. For the Primogen that the Custodians currently have swayed is Primogen Hilda McAndrews. And her Primogen ability is Artist of the Story, which grants access to a unique action to change the narrative. Spend 6 rep and reduce your shunned level by 1. For yes, the custodians have on more than one occasion been shunned by the rest of Kindred Society for their actions. And again, Hilda McAndrews is stepping in to butter up the ongoing rumours and discussions and word on the block to say the custodians aren't that bad. Trust me, I'm the head rose in this garden. I know what's right, what's truth, and what is fact. And this is what is truth. They're going to spend 6 rep, 6 of their earned rep. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to undo that shunned level and reduce it by 1. Custodians unlocking a new technology. Bribes. Yeah, they are looking like they're becoming a bit of a threat, don't they? They're getting powerful in intriguing ways. And speaking of that power, after having rewritten their image in the Kindred public eye, the custodians turn their gaze to another Primogen for their second action. And they are going to perform the Sway Primogen action on Delson Coates, who they've already begun a long time ago, and they're halfway there. And they are going to use this new technology referred to as bribes in the chat by spending 1 coin to add 1 tick. And of course, roll social. Let us see how they do. Oi, indeed, Tuanoli. Oi, indeed. That is a 5. That is 2 ticks. And with a little bit of cash, a little bit of coin, a little bit of gold, greasing the palms, Delson Coates, who was in the past swayed by the Redcoats, now becomes swayed by the custodians. Boo! Tomato, tomato, tomato. The chat is an uproar. As the custodians now have sway over an entire third of the Primogen Council. Oof. Oof. Oh dear. Intriguing stuff. As the hunters are out in force, the custodians are using gold-tinted words. So, there's 0 contempt in the custodians tracker. I heard Basil's accent isn't even real. What do you mean? That's not a shunned level 1 kind of reference. I suppose you guys aren't you aren't. What's the word I'm looking for? You aren't bestowed or beholden to the shunned bar, the shunned levels. For you have your own more accurate opinions and personal opinions of each faction. And yes, that is right. The Redcoats do have a -1 opinion of the custodians. And likewise, the custodians of the Redcoats. The custodians only have 0 contempt, which means they are in the 0 to 3 contempt bracket. So we will see what their shiny words brings about in terms of consequences. Gain 1 scrutiny to a domain. A little scary considering what the current bill on the floor is. So we will go bottom up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, hold on. You can't see my mouse. Oh, can you see my mouse? You can see my mouse. Yes, I remember to keep my mouse on. You can see my mouse. You saw what I was able to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, let us see which of these domain gains a scrutiny. Out of curious one, JJ, what my takes for Boston University now? So, when it comes to your turn, I will elaborate on that. But because it's not quite your turn, I will hold back. You will get an answer, because I saw this as a potential, and this potential has panned out. Now they have gotten a 3, which means it is the Valentine. That's not Valentine. Valenti, I think. I'm going to pronunciate that. Branch Library has gained 1 scrutiny. And yes, that is a bit scary. Because if you remember at the end of last month, when the bill was announced, there is a phone possession ban bill on the floor for the December winter 2025 congressional session. And if this bill is tabled, all player factions and Boston Camarilla domains gain +3 scrutiny. So any scrutiny gain on these domains is a scary one, because who knows? Perhaps this bill will be tabled and the Kindred will say no to a phone ban, a phone possession ban. So, that brings us to the end of the Custodian's turn. And we move on to the Knights. Though the Knights... Ooh. Good question. What have they unlocked? Let me double check, because they definitely had a conversation about this. Crew upgrade, because I hadn't put it down. So, they had filled their XP bar last turn, and they had not come to a decision before they had filled it, so I could have done it in that turn. So I get the opportunity to do it now and fulfill it, for another faction ability is being unlocked. Warband. I think it's quite appropriate that Warband is being unlocked, considering the conflict that we are currently experiencing. The ability to arm yourselves and go out in force is very appealing to these warriors. Warband. Where typical Kindred stealthily hunt their prey in a careful dance, the Knights will occasionally gather an entire warband, where in a single night several Kindred will descend upon a region in a grand hunt. The warbands can assail entire neighborhoods in a single night, which is an impressive feat, if a messy one. That is a scary one. That is a scary one. Hug and Kiss. Formal request to do passive effects from turf abilities at the end of the turn, because I wrote into narrative. Do you mind clarifying a little bit, Hug and Kiss? What do you mean by that? I think I know what maybe you don't. Do passive effects from turf at the end of the turn? As in resource generation? Is that what you're asking? Yes, though. It is a very scary one, Warband. When performing the hunt action, you may gain 1 contempt to increase the scrutiny by 1 on each domain adjacent to the target domain. Everyone be upgrading. Everyone be upgrading. So, they gain 1 XP, 1 coin, -1 contempt, and +1 long-term project tick, which goes into nowhere because they do not possess a long-term project clock, nor have they put it in that they want to send it to any of their allies. So, the very first action me, Aubrey of the group. Yes. So you are asking for passives, these resource generations, to happen at the end of the turn. The Knights unlocked a new technology, gang violence, yay! Let me double check, because I do have the operations. Do I have it explicitly said? I am going to say no, that that because the order of operations happen in this way, and it's a standard, that you're not, as a ruling, you won't be able to shift around when you gain your passive resources. You say it's in reference to the narrative? Oh no. That comment has been removed. Never mind. If you want to put into your private Haven, Coterie Haven channel the reasons for your request, you can, but that is my current standing, is that no, that you aren't able to change the order of the operations in which calculate resources happens at the beginning of a faction's turn, which we have just done for the Knights, whose first action will be to perform the assist action on the Patriots, which they have done, and their second action will be to perform the Sway Primogen action, another Sway Primogen action, on Dejan Silks. Silks? Is that how you pronounce that surname? Sakia. I completely dyslexic reading that. Dejan Sayaka. Sayaka. Ooh. Doesn't it affect anything mechanically, just stylistic / narrative. Okay, I see. Okay, if there's a different place you want me to read a narrative, feel free to point to it in your channel. But if it's not too big of an impact, we can carry forward. But yes, as the custodians expand their sway of the Primogen, the Knights move in to get their own hands in the pie and perform a Sway Primogen action of their own. And because of the Knights' ethos, if I quickly show you it here, the way they are laid out, but I don't have the Primogen on a button I can click. Unfortunate. But I can show you how aligned the Knights are with each of the Primogen. And with Dejan, the Tremere Primogen, they are incredibly aligned under Silas's leadership. For the size of the clock to sway Dejan by the Knights is only 2 ticks. So, sway Dejan Sayaka. Ooh. Sway Primogen. 4 ticks. 2 ticks already filled in. The knights are indeed politicking. And they are going to roll social, which is a 0 dice, which is handy that this is such a small clock, but we'll see how well they do. Here we go. Do they get it in one, or are they going to have to do this in 2 turns? Oh, it is 2 turns. Even though Dejin and Silas are currently are under very similar mindsets, the knights have never been the most adept when it comes to politicking. And it will take an extra month at the minimum to bring Dejin on board with the knights' schemes. Their second action is to spend 1 coin for the Blades of Iron cohort to perform a reduced scrutiny action on Chelsea Clocks. For yes, Chelsea Clocks is in the danger zone at the moment if the advisory bill is tabled. For +3, for 5 + 3 is indeed 8, and would mean if the bill is tabled, Chelsea Clocks would be one of the domains that would fall under investigation by the SI. So we are going to roll the cohort after we have spent the coin. That is a 1. That is a 1. But that is that still is a progress, and we are out of the danger zone. It's still a lot of scrutiny, but we're not quite so precariously positioned on Chelsea Clocks. Thank goodness. And that brings us to the end of the knights' turn. They are at 1 contempt in the 0 to 3 contempt bracket. So we click this button and we see what the consequences of their actions are. Gain 1 contempt. There you go. And we move on to perhaps the stars of this particular episode of our season, the group. For the group are embroiled, as you can see now in the top right corner of the screen, in a conflict with the Society of Saint Leopold. They have a juicy amount of narrative for us to read out. Let us see how well they do in this battle for survival. A Cold War gone hot. Snapshots of kindred blending in seamlessly in subways, on buses, and driving through the streets of Boston. William Cahill sits at the center of it all. Beggar turned war hero turned hooligan turned mob boss turned general turned performer. William steps out of his van and onto the docks of South Boston, seemingly finalizing a deal and passing off multiple living kind, blindfolded and ready to be consumed. William dutifully fulfills his role of El Pantalone, old and blinded by his greed, hoping the Society of St. Leopold will indeed be his audience tonight, so he might stop the conflict before it even gets off the ground. I was supposed to check the pronunciation of that quote, because quotation, the little epitaph that was put under quotations, because I knew, I was like, is that a 2 or is that an IL? Maybe it's Pantalo II. Maybe it's El Pantalone. Perhaps not. My apologies. We are at +1 wrap and +2 long-term project ticks. to the upgrade domain Pine Street Inn long-term project. And we move on to the first of the actions that the group are going to be performing. Before we do that, though, the group have established their war goals this month for their conflict against the Society of St. Leopold. If we quickly have a little glance at conflict, we will be able to see what the possible options there are for conflict goals. And the group have chosen war goal number 3, to reduce the opponent's mental, physical, or social stat by 1. And they are choosing to reduce, if they win this conflict, they will reduce the Society of St. Leopold's mental stat by 1. The reason that is of particular potence is that mental is the stat rolled for investigations. And is the stat used when a domain is under investigation for that NPC faction to swoop in. So the group is trying to undermine the Society of St. Leopold's ability to secure domain within the city, weaken them once and for all. Maybe not for all, they might get their strength back, but definitely weaken them. Let us see how they fare in this with their first major boon action. The group cashes in all the goodwill and boons they have stored up. Kindred all across the city, communicating with each other, putting themselves in vulnerable situations as bait. But when the society slivers into the light for too long, out from the shadows comes the hand and the knife, ready to cut the head off the snake before it can endanger the flock. They are spending one of their major boons to perform a contend conflict action. And they are going to be then rolling 3 dice as a result. Let us see how they do. Let me create conflict clock. 8 ticks. How well do they do? First conflict roll. That's a 4. That is 2 ticks. Action 1. Their first regular action. The climax of the whole production, the audience crying out in outrage and rushing the stage, only for the wings to clear out. Kindred and mortals alike, all in the name of repelling this cult of a long dead saint. They are going to roll tier for their contend conflict action and add 1 die for the assist that the Patriots had offered them. So that is 2 dice plus 1 for 3 dice in total. That's a 6. That is 3 ticks. Ooh. Here we go. That's not how you spell conflict, I don't think. And their third action is to spend 1 coin for the Boston Irish mob to also contend conflict. This will be 2 dice in total. It is possible, if they roll a 6, for the group to have completed their conflict clock and finish this conflict and win this conflict within a single turn. Let's see if the group's servants in the Irish mob will come through. Not quite yet. That is a single tick towards the conflict clock. And because the contend conflict action can only be performed once with a regular action, the group have performed all the contend conflict roles they can do this turn. They have made a massive leap forward in the opening stages of this conflict. They are 2 ticks away from victory. They only need 2 ticks next turn. In fact, if they have the coin next turn, they can have the Irish mob and their regular action perform a contend conflict action each, guaranteeing them victory. But they'll need to source that coin somewhere for the group to not passively generate coin themselves. But that is not all the group are doing. Because finally, on the home front, we see the good people who are under the protection of the group continuing their work for a brighter future. After all, what point is defending your flag if the soil it sits in is barren and bare? And what land will you have left if your claim isn't ever expanding? The group is going to use their second regular action to perform the claim domain action at Southampton Yard. Now, the group does not have a neighbouring domain to Southampton Yard. It is 2 links away, 2 spaces away, which means it is a 6-tick clock in total to claim the domain of Southampton Yard. I just want to make sure it definitely is Southampton Yard you're claiming, yes? It is indeed. Claim domain. They're going to roll here, and we shall see how well they do here in their efforts to expand. That is 1/3 of the way. 2 ticks out of 6 to claim the railways in Southend. Oh, that is an exciting turn that has occurred for the group. Massive progress made in the conflict, but the war between the Society and St. Leopold that is raging against the group is not over yet, and will perhaps bleed into next month, but we'll have to see how the Society of St. Leopold does after all. Let us see the consequences of the group's action, for they are at 5 contempt, thus they are in the 4/5 contempt bracket. Gain 2 contempt. Yes, for the group have incited the hunter. And this war will not be limited to group kindred alone. We move on to the Gemini League. You are gaining XP and have some exciting actions ahead of them. Their first action will be to claim Winthrop Yacht Club, the domain that they lost to investigation by the SI a long time ago. And because they only have 1 tick left, it means when they roll tier and get a 6 anyway, all they need is 1 tick. And the Winthrop Yacht Club is now back under the Gemini League's control. As it should be. I imagine they would say. As it should be. Ooh, did not mean to focus in on that. We move back to the faction sheet. For their second action is to resolve the harrowing, the harrowing Gestalt haunting at Carson Beach. For yes, whilst the SI are out in force, this creature of oblivion is still out there and still stalking the streets. The knights have been the ones thus far only to engage with this creature, but now the Gemini League are beginning to see to the matter. We are rolling mental because even though it is a mental roll in a way, calling Cthulhu, when you perform the resolve event action targeting an occult curiosity event, they always roll mental and they gain +1 XP. This is an occult curiosity event, so they do gain that +1 XP, and they roll mental to see how well they do in resolving this. 2 dice. Fortunate roll. No coin to provide a bonus. That's a 3. That's a lot of contempt. I imagine those deniers of the existence of this creature are rather perturbed and annoyed at the Gemini League for involving themselves in this. As 2 + 2 is 4 contempt. 1, 2, 3, 4. For how bold of the Gemini League to fan these rumors of a creature that clearly doesn't exist. But that is 5 XP that is gained by the Gemini League, filling their crew, their XP bar, and then also getting them 2 into the next one. That's another advancement on the board. They will have to see, they have to make a choice for what they are wanting to unlock. And because it was a cult curiosity event, that is another tick for the Occult Renaissance faction objective to resolve 10 occult curiosity events. The Gemini League is also spending 1 coin for their cohort to perform the reduced scrutiny action at Fort Independence. So, they are rolling the cohort, but they are also adding 1 die, for they have the 5 Sisters domain, which grants +1 die to the reduced scrutiny action, which will be 3 dice in total. Contempt is getting high across the board. It really, really is. And that is a 3. So that is 1 -1 scrutiny for Independence, countering the scrutiny that will be gained at Fort Independence if this event is not resolved at the end of the turn. Speaking of resolving events, I'm going to remove the Harrowing Gestalt event from this board to make sure I do not do the damage it will do if it wasn't resolved, because it wasn't resolved. To remind you all about that, that bottom 3rd paragraph, if a hunting is not resolved, it will grant a domain it was located at with a negative effect, which is why it is so important for these hauntings to be dealt with. and for the harrowing Gestalt to not leave the scars on reality. That brings us to the end of the Gemini League's turn. They are at contempt. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which is 6+ in the contempt bracket. Let us see what the consequences of their actions are. Gain +2 contempt and 1 harm to a cohort. That's 1 harm weak, +2 contempt, and a shunned level. Yes, the Gemini League, having joined the cries alongside the knights as proclaiming that the harrowing Gestalt, this creature of the Oblivion, is indeed real, has sparked outrage among kindred society. The Gemini League are supposed to be scholars and respectful guardians of knowledge and academics. How could they fan such hyperbole rumors? I'm tripping over words as I try to improvise a little bit of narrative. Ouch, indeed. The Gemini League join the crowding Hall of Fame of Shame. Hall of Shame. They join, well, not the Custodians. The Custodians got out of the Hall of Shame, but they join the Knights and the Patriots. Who, speaking of which, the Patriots' turn begins now. They gain 1 rep. Ooh, not quite that. They gain 1 rep and 1 XP. And their first action will be to provide the assist to the group that made sure the group made excellent strides in their conflict. Their second action will be determined by whether the combat zone has 0 scrutiny or not. The combat zone has 0 scrutiny. So that means the Patriots will be resolving the event at the Boston Fire Department, which is a kindred dispute event in which requires the mental roll, has the Boston Camarilla present, and when resolved, will yield them a minor boon, which has the resolve event and host reception action. How nice. We shall see how well they do in this action. Do they have a faction ability to do with these types of event? When you resolve the event targeting a masquerade breach. It's not a masquerade breach, it's a kindred dispute. So, we will be rolling mental. Their weakest stat, unfortunately, but I have full faith in the Patriots either way. That's a 1, not a 5, unfortunately. A 1, which means they gain 2 contempt for the way they handled this affair. But they do gain that minor boon. I am going to just copy that. That minor boon. For handling this dispute at the Boston Fire Department. And also preventing the scrutiny of this domain from raising at the end of the turn. Nice and quick and snappy. That does mean that they are in the 4/5 contempt bracket. Let us see the consequences of their action here. 2 contempt. Contempt is going very, very, very... You get an additional die from the combat zone. That is correct. Ooh, no. That is not correct, unfortunately. That's resolve events of kind politics type, not Kindred Disputes, which I am going to check because I've already deleted it off the board. So I'm going to check what it was on the events board in the Discord channel. It's at the top. Yes, a Kindred Dispute. Very similar in terms of big initial word. I can understand the confusion, but you have reminded me of something, which I have also forgotten though. Because of the combat zone, you gain 1 XP for performing the assist another faction action. Which means you've gained another XP from that first action you did, of course. Thank you for the reminder. Yeah, unfortunately not quite the right match of the types of events. But either way, you have gained yourself a minor boon out of it. And we move on to the final player faction action. Set of actions. Who have written us a snappy little narrative to read. Oh, of course. Of course you put in a last minute narrative with what I believe is Latin within it. Okay, I'm going to try my best. I haven't rehearsed this. Gosh darn you, redcoats. More narrative as it appears before my very eyes. Saviter in modo, frontier in re. Gently in a manner, firmly in action. Following the news of impending war, Humphrey set in motion, preparing his services to that of others. He had made promises that in situations now called upon for him to fulfill. Yet sadly, no matter of one's intentions or wills, affairs of self must be resolved first and foremost. Gentle in manner, firmly in action. Gotta keep the dyslexia on its toes. Yep. You're definitely doing that. What is a brother not for if not to bully me? Hug and kiss. Now, we're going to do their first action, which is to also, for me, my first action in this moment is to give them coin, for that is their passive income. And also to say, this clock, because... okay, I haven't written this in the rules, but I had decided this morning when I was going over the realities of the actions this turn and what could possibly unfold. Because it is out of your control, what happens if, say, you lost a domain that was providing you the size of a clock? If you had a claim domain action already put in place, then the clock size remains unaffected until the end of the turn. So we act as if you still had that. You still had access to the boss for Fenway Park to measure distance to the Boston University, because you acted within this month and you had that distance to that domain in this month. But if you weren't to complete the clock this turn, you would still possess the ticks you had, but the clock would be updated in its size. Same goes for, say, you had a Sway Primogen clock and your ethos changed, which changed the way in which the size of the Sway Primogen clock. If the change happened within the turn and you had already put in place a Sway Primogen action, the clock wouldn't be changed in its size until the end of the turn. So you would still roll with the previous size clock in mind. So if you complete it now, you complete it before the clock changes in size. No, you don't need to regret bullying. I had made that decision long ago. It seems only fair for you guys, because otherwise it seems unfair for you to have to then consider that type of mathematical possibility of your clock sizes being changed on you. So, speaking of which, your first action is to perform the claim domain action on, you've guessed it, the Boston University, which you only need 1 tick, so surely you're not going to spend your 6s on this. Oh, you spent a 5, not a 6. 2 ticks going into that 1 tick. And right as the custodians sway away dazzling coats, the Boston University falls into the hands of the redcoats. There we go. Oh, okay. Bullion was shoot forthwith. As it should. As it should. We also have the second action of the redcoats, which will be to resolve the event at Club Passum, a kind politics event. This would have been the type of event that the combat zones effect would affect for the event at Club Passum, which, mind you, is a custodian's domain. Is a kind politics event requiring a social role in which the Boston Camarilla is present and, if resolved, will yield 3 coin and 2 XP. The redcoats have a faction objective called A Man in Trust, in which they gain a tick for every kind politics event that they resolved, which this is one of them. They do not have their gentleman's profession, which has to do with kind politics events, so no bonuses in that regard, but they do have 2 dice in social. So we shall, pardon me, see how they do. That's a 6, so this goes flawlessly and without contempt. They gain 3 coin and 2 XP, filling their vaults and increasing their proficiency. And the event is removed from the board. But we raise a question. This is custodian domain. And as per the rules, if you resolve an event on another faction's domain, you have to pay taxes in order to not affect their status. But wait. The redcoats have proactive espionage. You consider factions at status 0 and -1 your rivals. Those factions do not consider you as a rival faction. The custodians and the redcoats are -1. Technically it's -2 in which you gain the rival status, but the redcoats with their proactive espionage, and we will read out because this is an instance in which the flavor is potent. In 2014, the Six-State War ended for the Kindred of Liberty, but the redcoats, the only thing that changed was the military doctrine. Boston was not ready for another open war, so the redcoats would adapt to Sir Maurice's strategy, a doctrine of his own creation named proactive espionage. The redcoats know their existence is mostly unwanted in the city of Boston, and as such every kind word, smile, and promise bears as much weight as the knife poised against their back. To the redcoats, allies are preferable. But if one can't be loved, then they will most certainly settle before being feared. And one important note about rivals have a lot of things that happen. It means you can perform the humiliate rival actions because you can only target rivals with that action. And rivals may perform resolve event actions on a rival's domain without having to pay 1 coin to avoid status loss. So, because of their proactive espionage, the Redcoats consider the Custodians their rivals. So they do not have to pay the coin to maintain status, because they're not going to lose status. So no coin spent, and also this status is maintained. A little bit of trickery by the Redcoats there, as they're being thrillery spies in espionage ways. How dastardly. And as Tuanoni JJ is very dutifully doing, he's reminded me that he's added a little bit of narrative at the end of this turn. In these nights of conflict and strife, Sir Humphrey Morris could be seen entering the antiquate buildings of Club Passum to interact with some of the high society of Boston in one of the greatly exclusive clubs of the area. The cherry on top, of course, was using the Custodian's domain to do it, with or without their consent. Not gonna lie, Tuanoni JJ says, the not paying coin combined with the Custodians nicking Delson makes me very happy. Indeed, the Custodians and the Redcoats are chipping away at each other, as if it were old times, as if the Six-State War was still in full effect and swing. Perhaps now it's just moved into the shadows. That brings us to the end of the Redcoats' turn. They are only on 4 contempt, which is still the 4/5 contempt bracket, so we shall see what the consequences of their actions are going to be. 2 scrutiny to a domain. A little terrifying considering that bill that's on the floor at the moment. We'll go bottoms up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Domain select. 7 is the number. 5. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fanway Market. Oh no! Let me count that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Plus 2 scrutiny. Fanway Marketplace falls under investigation. Gain a domain. Lose a domain. The SI are clamping down on Redcoat domains. Giddy ant. The SI are out there in force and are encroaching even into the inner lands here. Oh no, indeed. Another investigation will begin next month. Speaking of which, as we close out the player factions, we move on to the Society of St. Leopold, who have to fight back in their conflict against the Redcoats. Not against the Redcoats, not quite yet. The Society of St. Leopold aren't going after the Redcoats. Well, maybe not directly. Perhaps potentially indirectly, as that scrutiny may be the result of it, as the heightened SI activity is generating consequences for all, if you want to interpretate the dice in that manner. No, the Society of St. Leopold need to punch back against the group, for the group have made tremendous strides in their conflict clock. But the Society of St. Leopold have a conflict clock of their own. And a narrative to be read out. Huh? Phew. Yeah. I just a Floydrian slip, perhaps? Question mark? A holy pyre of wrath has been lit. A minister, one of the mighty's very own actors on this world, was murdered in cold blood. The weekend after that cold November night, it was reported to Her Excellency, Prince Hazel, that a haven of coterie based on the edge of Back Bay has been cracked open in daylight. Just going to mark out Back Bay. On the edge of Back Bay has been cracked open in the daylight. All 4 neonates who had called the basement apartment home had been granted the last decree of final death. The very next day, a Tory Doors Chinatown haven had been set on fire in the morning hours, resulting in her untimely, or perhaps long overdue, demise. And a Nosferatu, known to have lingered near the underground station of the Tufts Medical Center, has been reported missing by her clanmates. There has been even 2 instances of a lone kindred making their way from the Sulture Punk Bar near the end of the night, being jumped by a gang of mortals. One was lucky enough to have been saved by fellow kindred bystanders, who would go on to report the instance. The other was not so lucky. It is overwhelmingly clear where these hunters are directing their vengeance. The group's domain is the territory within the crosshairs, but already the tally of non-group affiliated kindred caught in the crossfire is at 8. It would appear God's wrath does not discriminate against the devil's servants. The beacons are indeed lit. Rut-row and holy shit indeed. Action 1 of the Society of St. Leopold is to perform a contend conflict action. They only roll 1 dice here, but we shall see how strong this dice is. It's a 3. We're not off to a great start, but they do have a minor boon, which they are also going to spend on a contend conflict action. So that is 2 dice. Not great as well. They're not exactly hitting the group, it appears. They may be getting a lot of bystander kindred as opposed to the group kindred. Dang. But that's not all. For the Society of St. Leopold during a conflict have 2 actions in total in which they have at their disposal. Where'd they get a boon? Curious. Perhaps a previous event that they resolved? Perhaps they used an anticipate needs action. God, of course, was the provider. Yeah, God provided. But, as I was saying, they have a second action. And whilst they don't have the strongest of tier rolls, their hunt roll is 2 dice. And they are performing the hunt action at the Sulture Punk Bar, which is currently at 4 scrutiny. And I believe they are spending 2 coin to increase the dice roll. They are doing that, they get a bonus dice. That is a 6. That is 3 scrutiny. 4 plus 3 is 7. 1 scrutiny away from investigation. God provided his one and only son. Yada, yada, yada. Nowhere near the same strides has been made by the Society of St. Leopold that the group has made. And I imagine it would be pretty clear to you all who is probably going to come out ahead in this conflict, as the group, as a player faction, does indeed go before the Society of St. Leopold next turn. But I don't think you can say it won't have its casualties and consequences. We move on to the Boston Camarilla, who gain 1 coin and 2 XP here, and have a narrative of their own to be read out. The kindred of Boston are full of fear, and who can blame them? Kindred vitae and dust spilt by mortal hand. Many are fleeing the domain stewarded by the group, and many are beginning to point fingers. It is the Boston Camarilla's duty to maintain a sense of order and stability in this tumultuous month. Thus, resources have been devoted to the hounds in order to rejuvenate their presence in the city. Their efficiency and experience will remind the citizens of Boston that despite the dangerous times we are in, that the city on a hill will forever remain a kindred city. Recover. They are performing a recover action with their first action, which will remove all the harm on Hazel's hounds. And they are then going to spend 1 coin for Hazel's hounds to resolve a decree enforcement event at Blue Pearl Pet Hospital up in the north in Somerville, which will yield them 3 rep. And doesn't require a mental roll. Instead, it requires a cohort roll, which is 3 dice. That is a 4, which is 1 harm on Hazel's hounds. Pleasure to have you among us, Silver. Pleasure to see you. Hey, the hounds are licking their wounds. Phenomenal, phenomenal work. Bravo to you. Roses. Chucking them on the stage for you, doing only JJ for those words. Now, that's 3 rep gained. And an event removed from the board. And a little bit of harm gained as the hounds go out in their force to clean up the city. We close out. Oh, I forgot to do the entanglements on the Society of St. Leopold. They're in a entanglement 3, so they gain 1 contempt. And back to the Boston Camarilla, who are on 1 contempt, but also 1 shunned level. And also gain 1 contempt. We move on to the final faction to perform actions this turn. First Light, who have a narrative to read as well. The boats and yacht moored in the quays along Marginal Street have reportedly been falling under far more intense scrutiny and inspection than the pleasure and commercial sailors are used to. Unfortunately, all they can do is complain and present their permits and licenses, as the new legislation for the zone is perfectly legal and is being strictly enforced. First Light, as their first action, is going to perform a claim domain action on the Jeffries Yacht Club. So, we are going to type Jeffries Yacht Club. Claim domain action. It is a 4-tick clock, for it is an adjacent domain to the Boston Logan International Airport. And we are going to roll tier as the SI gain 2 ticks towards expanding their domain and their coverage of the city. As that threat looms over in the distance, we roll entanglements, for they are at 6+ entanglements. They gain 2 contempt and +1 harm to a cohort, but they do not possess a cohort. And that brings us to the end of the turn. Uh-oh, indeed. Uh-oh, indeed. For the first time, the SI factions are beginning to just perform the claim action. We claim the ability to claim things. You are correct. You are correct. Well reminded at the end there. I'm going to roll that additional dice. Going to scroll up. See if did they roll a 6. The Gemini League. The Gemini League. They rolled mental. No, you did not roll a 6. So if you roll a 6 here, you are correct. So let's see. You roll a 6 as the additional die. It's a 2. Unfortunately, the roll stays the same, but you are completely correct. Let's double check the Giovanni building. Is it just +1 die? Just +1 die to occult curiosity. You are correct. Thank you for keeping me right there. I managed to do this in stream, that correction. So you rolled 3 dice in total then. You rolled 3, a 3, and a 2, which means you're in the bottom bit of that. I don't know if you can claim the claim action. How are you supposed to claim things if you guys have the claim action? Oh, I see. I see what the intent is. But that brings us to the end of this turn. The end of our first turn of conflict. I imagine this conflict will come to a conclusion in the final month of the year. But that final month of the year will need some action, some events to spice up the lives. For a mortal crime is happening at the Prudential Center, with the Society of St. Leopold is present. A kind politics event is happening at South Station, with kindred citizens present. A kind politics event is happening at Rivermark Apartments, where the Society of St. Leopold is present. A mortal crime event is happening at the Charles River Yacht Club, where kindred citizens are present. Another mortal crime event is happening at the Jeffreys Yacht Club, where more kindred citizens, all the yacht club and the kindred citizens, a mortal crime. Maybe that legislation being enforced by the government is needed. A harrowing gestalt is haunting the grounds of the Boston Sand and Gravel domain. A mortal crime event is happening at Fort Banks, where First Light is present. A cult curiosity event is happening at Club Passam, in which the Society of St. Leopold is present. A decree enforcement event is happening at Long Wharf, where First Light is present. And do not forget, you lovely souls, there is a bill to be voted on in which the scene for the winter 2025 congressional session will begin tomorrow. You guys have a phone possession ban bill to pass or table. With all this SI activity happening, all the havens being bursted into, teared open to sunlight, with all the kindred being dusted in the streets, with the domain falling under investigations at the core of our city, I think it's about time, don't you, to get rid of these mobile phones, these trackers that we carry on us. We can't let any advantage be handed to the hunter. The Society of St. Leopold is all over those events. But you guys have a phenomenal Christmas, holiday, end of the year and winter solstice. Enjoy the longest night of the year as it approaches us. Make the most of it. In this conflict against the hunter, make most advantage of these long nights as we fight back the SI. I wish you good times when we close out this year. Oh, before I do, I will just want to announce, due to the nature of my holiday times, I will be away from my computer on the final Sunday of December. So, I am decreeing that because I'm so kind, we're going to give you an early Christmas gift. And instead of having the turn of December, turn 5 of season 2 occur on the 28th of December, it will be a week earlier on the 21st of December. I look forward to seeing you all there. And I wish you a phenomenal year. End to the year. Do take care, and I will see you guys